Welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I'm doing a little reading update for the books that I have completed and am still working on so far for the month of March. If you watched my March TBR video, you already know that my TBR slash pile of possibilities was absolutely insane for March because there's just so many books that I wanted to get to and really wanted to participate in several events, the most notable one being Middle Grade March, but I'm also participating in March of the Mammoths. And not in my TBR, I did not mention that I also participated in the Let's Get Graphic read-along, which was a 24-hour readathon of just reading graphic novels or manga. I did already post a vlog on that, so I will link that if you didn't already see it, because I'm not going to go into very much detail about those books since I did do a whole vlogging experience and expressed all my thoughts more in depth there, but I will go over them very quickly. So in that vlog, I did complete 5 graphic novels slash manga and then DNF'd one of them. Most of these are children's graphic novels, so they're very, very quick and easy to get through. And that was the reason why I was able to read so many of them in 24 hours. But the one that was not a children's book is actually a manga, and that's Spy Family Volume 7. So now I have one more volume, and then I think I'm caught up, I think. I did actually enjoy this one. It's not my favorite volume of Spy Family, but it's also not my least favorite. I can't remember if I gave it 4 or 5 stars, but I did really enjoy it. It still has the wholesome, fun vibes. I also picked up Chef Yasmina and the Potato Panic, which, as you can see, just has some really delightful art styles in it. And I enjoyed the original premise of this book, but then it got really weird and convoluted, and I don't even know. I think I gave it 2 stars. I was just like, what is going on here? Next, I picked up a recommendation from my daughter, and that's A Cat Story, which is about a cat that's hoping to find a home. And this book is super unique in that it has like the regular story of the cats, but then when they encounter other characters, the other characters tell their story in different art forms, which is just really, really cool. So you have just, the regular illustrations, which is like the cover and here, but there's other art styles intermixed, which felt really unique. I didn't super connect to the story, but I loved the art style. As I read Jukebox, which had a really interesting premise and really adorable art in it, but unfortunately, I felt like the premise was not executed well and just didn't enjoy it as much as I was hoping. And then the graphic novel that I DNF'd was Wing Bearer, which is the most beautiful artwork out of any of the graphic novels that I read, but I was just having a really difficult time with the fantasy world and with the story, and so I just felt like it wasn't for me, so I ended up DNFing that one. And then the last one that I did complete is 5 Worlds, The Sand Warrior. This is the first in a series that my daughter absolutely loves, and so she recommended this one to me, and unfortunately, it just felt like a lot. It felt like it had potential, and this is more, I don't know, it's kind of a mix of sci-fi and fantasy, and so I think that the premise has potential, the world has potential, but it just felt really like disconnected, and I didn't enjoy it enough to want to continue with it, but my daughter really likes the entire series. Okay, so now let's get into the other books that I've completed so far this month. I think almost all of them, if not all of them, are middle grades, which is not surprising because my section of middle grades that I was really hoping to get to this month was gigantic. So I have quite a few to share with you. The first one that I finished, I actually started in February, and it was because I just kind of couldn't help myself. I needed to start a middle grade earlier, and that is Tune It Out. This is for the neurodivergence representation prompt for middle grade March that I picked this one up. I hadn't heard anyone talking about it, but I was like Googling neurodivergent characters in middle grade, and this is one of the ones that popped up, and I loved the cover. I thought it was so beautiful. This is about a young girl, Lou, who lives with her mother in their pickup truck, and Lou doesn't go to school or anything because Lou's mom is worried that CPS will get wise to what is happening, that they don't live in an actual home, and so they go from place to place all the time, so that way Lou can kind of stay with her mom. And Lou has an amazing gift for singing, and so her mother is always pressuring her to perform in hopes that she'll make it big and they'll finally be able to settle down somewhere. But Lou has sensory processing disorder, and as a result of that, it's really difficult for her to be in front of crowds, for her to perform, for her to hear clapping and cheering and all that kind of stuff, and people coming up and wanting to talk to her and touch her is really, really difficult for her. So shortly into the book, something happens where Lou ends up being separated from her mother, and then it's just kind of her on this journey figuring out who she is, what is it that she really wants in life, and kind of coming to grips with learning about the sensory processing disorder that she has. I enjoyed this book quite a bit. I think I gave it either 3.5 or 4 stars. It was really good. I didn't feel super emotionally connected to the characters, and you'll find as I am talking that so far has been a theme for me with Middle Grade March, is I'm looking for a story and some characters that I can just like fully invest in, and have had a lot of difficulty finding that so far this month. I was really hoping for a bunch of new favorites, and that just has not happened, but I still felt like the representation was good in this book, and I really liked Lou's character, and the exploration of her, it just felt really realistic, and so I enjoyed it. The next book that I completed is In Myrtle Peril. This is book 4 of the Myrtle Hardcastle series, and I buddy read this with my friends Jess and Rainey, and that was a delight. I have read most of these books with them, and so it's been so fun to just continue to be in Myrtle's world with them. We did find out that book 5 is being released in October, and we're all thrilled, and we're like, yes, we have to read this together. So that was really fun. I really enjoyed this book a lot. I love the Myrtle Hardcastle series. It is about a young girl growing up in Victorian times who is, you know, her father wants her to be raised as a lady, but she has this very unnatural fascination with murder and wanting to solve murder cases. And her dad is like a prosecutor, and so that's part of the reason why. But yeah, so she lives with her father and her governess, Miss Judson, and goes on all kinds of different adventures. And as much as her father wants her to stay away from murders, it seems like murders just seem to happen around her really frequently. This book is a little bit different and turns it on its head just a little bit. Her father ends up needing surgery in the hospital, and while he's there, he thinks that he has witnessed a murder, and Myrtle is not sure whether or not he actually did or whether or not this is the pain meds talking. So it was really fun to almost see like this role reversal of how her father generally treats her when she's trying to snoop too much, and she's trying to do that with him. And so it was really fun. There was also, you know, a case of trying to prove someone's identity and some other things like that. So there were multiple kind of mysteries that all converged at the end. I will say that out of some of the Myrtle Hardcastle books that I've read, this may be the one that has kind of stuck with me the least, but it didn't make it any less enjoyable. I still really, really liked it, but books 1 and 3 continue to be my favorites so far. I also listened to the audiobook of Omar Rising by Ayesha Saeed this month, and I love Amal Unbound. I think it is such a wonderful book. It is about this young girl in Pakistan and kind of difficulties that she faces with her education. And Omar Rising is a companion novel to Amal Unbound. Omar is Amal's best friend in the first book. And so in this book, he's received a scholarship and he's able to go to this prestigious boarding school for boys. And so he gets there and starts his education and kind of learns that the expectations and the way that scholarship kids are treated is different than how the kids are treated whose parents can afford to pay for them to be there. And so the book focuses a lot on that inequality. I found I didn't really connect to Omar as much as I did Amal. I think Omar seems like a much more passive personality than Amal, and maybe that's why it felt like he did, I don't know. I want to be careful how I phrase this. It felt like he did a lot more whining than he did actually like wanting to do something about it. Like he seemed like he was much more aware than any of the other scholarship kids or anyone else of like how unfair this treatment was, but he was the one that kind of wanted to risk his neck the least to actually do something about it. And I think that that made him just not as much of a protagonist that I connected with as much. So it was still a decent book. I gave it 3 stars. I liked it, but it just didn't live up to the hype of Amal and Bound in my mind, unfortunately. I also read The Many Mysteries of the Finkel Family, and I chose this again as a neurodivergence representation. And there's a lot of neurodivergence representation in this book. This book follows a Jewish family, and it mainly follows 2 of the sisters who are a year apart. I can't remember their names, which is awful. And I can't even like look for it because I got it on Kindle from my library. So anyways, there's 2 sisters and both of them are autistic. And they're autistic in very different ways, which I found to be really interesting because autism is a spectrum. And so their family has 4 children, and 3 out of the 4 children are autistic that manifest very differently in each of them. So the oldest sister is definitely like very high functioning. And then the second sister is nonverbal and uses a tablet to speak through. And so the oldest sister decides that she wants to start this detective agency, and the younger sister wants to get involved. And the older sister is tired of them always having to do things together and always being grouped together because they're only a year apart. So she doesn't want her sister to join. In the same respect, the younger sister is starting middle grade for the first year, and she's super nervous to go into a new school, especially since she talks through a tablet. She doesn't know, are kids going to accept her? Are kids going to make fun of her? And so there's a lot of concerns that are happening, and she's not really expressing them to a lot of people. And so it's interesting because the description of the book very much focuses on the creation of this detective agency and solving mysteries, and that was not very much of a part of this book at all. They start like looking into things like within their own family of things that they're like, oh, why is dad acting like this? And then they find out why, and different things like that. And the crux of the story is not this detective agency, it's family relationships. So it really was not at all what I was expecting. And I would compare it in that way to Absolutely Truly, which also billed itself as a mystery book and really wasn't. It had a lot more to do with family and their father suffering from PTSD from being in a war. So it's really weird when books do that, when they bill themselves as these, oh, look at these cute mysteries. And then it's like, no, this is just like more like a family drama than it is anything else. And so it was still good. I thought that it was really cool the different ways that they represented autism, because they also have a cousin who lives with them who is also autistic, and then their dad has ADHD. So pretty much everyone in their family, almost, except like their older brother, has some form of neurodivergence. And it wasn't like that was the point of the story. It was just part of who they were. And so I thought that that was cool that it was like that. And also I thought it was really cool how they kind of went into some of the Jewish practices that they had, particularly Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah. Those holidays, Jewish holidays, actually take place during the course of the book. And so we get to see their celebrations and traditions surrounding that, which I also thought was really cool. But again, I just didn't connect to the characters very much. So I gave this one 3 stars because I still feel like it's a good book. I don't know, it just didn't quite do it for me. It was missing something, and I don't really know what. So maybe the problem is me and not the book. I don't know. Next up, for Christy Lewis's Short Classics for Charity book club, I reread The Silver Chair by C.S. Lewis. And so far, this is my favorite book of the month, even though it's a reread. So I already knew that I was gonna love it. This was actually my favorite Narnia book when I was a child, and I haven't reread it since I was probably a young teen, like 12, 13, somewhere in that range. So it was really delightful to read this again decades later. I still remembered Puddleglum just being the best, and he was my favorite Narnian character, and I just love him. So it was really fun to read this story again. There's so much deep spiritual truth in this as well that is just beautiful. The discussion that we had for Christy's book club was phenomenal. It was so good. We were talking about what different parts of the book meant to us and how to interpret some of those things spiritually, and how C.S. Lewis liked to write myth stories to prepare children for the one true myth, meaning Jesus. And so looking for those nuggets together in this book was just such a special experience, and I absolutely loved that. So it was just a joy to reread this one. Is it still my favorite Narnia book? I haven't reread most of them as an adult. I have only reread The Magician's Nephew, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, and this one. So I still have 3 that I have not read as an adult, and I'm also not sure if I ever read The Horse and His Boy as a child, because I remember exactly 0 things about it. So I'm not sure if I even read that one. So I have to do some more rereading before I can definitively say that this is for sure still my favorite, but it's definitely still one of my favorites. I also read the sweetest little comic book called Cat's Cafe. This book, oh my gosh, it looks like such a cutesy, like funny little comic book, and it is, because it is about this cat who runs a cafe, and very shortly afterwards he hires a rabbit to be his barista, and there's a lot of funny things in there, a lot of things that I just like loved. I read this digitally, and so I do have some screenshots that I'll probably be putting up on the screen here of things that were just really cute and funny. But mental illness is tackled really well in this. There are different little comics that have to do with anxiety or imposter syndrome or depression or feeling like you're a burden on others even though they want to help you when you're struggling. And so there was just like a lot of like really like deep meaning to it, in addition to it being just really sweet and funny, and it was just like all that my heart needed. I loved it so much. Apparently there is a sequel to this, and I think it's actually like a web comic. So I need to see if the author, maybe he has like an Instagram or something. I can follow him on there and still see some of his comics that way as well. But there are 2 books. So I want to read the other book because it was just such a delightful read. The next book that I completed is one that I had such high hopes for, and that's Solimar, The Sword of the Monarchs by Pam Munoz Ryan. I really like Pam Munoz Ryan, in particular Esperanza Rising. That is definitely for sure my favorite of her books. I did enjoy Echo, but I didn't love it as much as a lot of people do. A lot of people Echo is their favorite. Solimar, I loved this cover, and it's about this young girl, Solimar, who is a princess of this kingdom. And there's a lot of Mexican culture that is represented in this book. She is about to have her quinceañera and be crowned like princess. She doesn't actually get crowned princess until her quinceañera. And she ends up in this area because her kingdom is a place where the monarch migration happens, like one of the places that they settle for the winter. And so she ends up in this clearing when they come, and kind of this magical thing happens, and she is gifted with this ability and also a very big responsibility. And so the book kind of goes from there, of her trying to figure out what to do with all this, and then there's something else that happens and she's kind of forced to go on this journey. It had a lot of promise. It really did. But there were issues that I had with it. I didn't feel like the story was very deep at all. I felt like it was very like lighthearted and just like, I don't know. I didn't feel like there was any depth to it at all. I also felt like, it's interesting because I was talking to a friend about this and we were both reading this, and we both kind of felt like it was overly descriptive to the point of it feeling clunky. And I love descriptive writing. So that's not me saying it should have had less descriptions. It's not the descriptions themselves. Not only were there so many of them and everything felt like overly descriptive, but like the descriptions themselves felt really forced. And as I was reading it, I was like, you know, I feel like this would make a great movie. This feels like the next like Disney princess, you know, like this would be a great Disney princess movie of like a Mexican or Latina Disney princess. And it's funny, then I flipped to the back of the book. I don't know if you can see that. Disney and Hyperion published this book together, and I'm like, okay, this is why it felt like a Disney movie to me. So I feel like it would be better as a movie. And I also feel like I think that a lot of kids would like it. And this is a middle grade book. So yes, it is geared towards children. And it feels like a children's book that's meant for children, which is great. Because sometimes I read children's books and they feel like they were written for adults. I'm like, what child? Who is this for? So this definitely feels like it is for children, but I didn't really connect with it. I think my daughter might really like it. So I gave it 3 stars because it wasn't like it was bad, but again, had the issue of just not really connecting with it. I had one other book that I finished so far this month, and I'm not going to talk about it too much because I have a vlog coming out where I'm going to talk about it more, but that is Maisie Chen's Last Chance by Lisa Yee. This is a Newbery nominee, and I am currently reading all the Newbery nominees, including the winner, and I am vlogging that experience and sharing my thoughts with you as I am reading them, and then I'm going to kind of compare and see if that's the book I would have chosen to win. So for that reason, I'm not going to tell you too much of my thoughts on this, but it is about Maisie Chen, who is a girl living with her mom in Los Angeles. Her mom is like a food stylist for commercials and magazines and all that kind of stuff. And Maisie's grandfather's health is failing, and so they decide they're gonna take the summer or part of the summer and go to Last Chance, Minnesota, where Maisie's grandparents own a Chinese restaurant called the Golden Palace. And they're gonna help with this restaurant while her grandfather is struggling with his health. And so this goes a lot into family and the past and how did Maisie's ancestors get to Last Chance, Minnesota, of all places. And it also delves into the history of immigration and racism towards Chinese people in the United States. So I feel like this book did a good job handling a lot of those topics, and I feel like it facilitates some good discussions to have with your kids. Okay, so since this is a reading update, I will tell you what I am currently reading right now. So I am currently reading Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. This is one of the mammoths that I am reading for March of the Mammoths. I am halfway-ish in it so far, and I have very mixed feelings. Very, very mixed feelings. I'm also currently reading C.S. Lewis's reflection on the Psalms, and I have been reading through the Psalms since the beginning of the year. I just kind of decided with my Bible reading this year, I've had very focused Bible reading plans the past couple of years, and this year I decided that I just wanted to be able to dig deeper and stay in passages longer and not feel like I need to go through at a certain pace. And so I have been slowly working my way through the Psalms since the beginning of the year. And I was looking kind of for a good spiritual read as we're, working into the Lent season. And so I decided to read C.S. Lewis's Reflections on the Psalms. I'm about halfway through. I'm also currently reading Barchester Towers. I am buddy reading this with Adrian from the Changeling Reader. I am about 6 chapters in, and I love it so much. The writing is so good. I'm also currently in the progress of reading 2 more Newbery nominees. So one is The Last Mapmaker. I am that far in, not that far. Buddy reading this with Miriam Elizabeth Reads. And I love this so far. We'll see how it ends up going. It is a fantasy, and I'm really liking the world building a lot. It's very class based, and that's something that I have always loved in fantasy worlds, but I haven't really seen that very much in middle grade fantasies. I see that more in YA or adult fantasies, and it is supposed to be Thai inspired as well. I don't know a lot about Thai culture though, so that's really interesting. I'm also currently reading Evilise Explains It All. I'm actually listening to the audio version of this because it is a free verse novel, so I figured, you know, free verse poetry is good to listen to. I'm about 30% of the way through that one. So there you go. That is what I have read so far and what I am in the process of reading. I would love to hear from you in the comments down below. What have you been reading so far? What is a book that you have really loved so far in the month of March? I hope that you're having a better March reading month than I am, because I've kind of really struggled and have only had a couple books that I've actually loved. Most of them have been pretty mediocre, or I haven't really enjoyed them that much. I will say a lot of the books that I'm reading right now that I'm currently in the process of, I'm liking a lot more than most of the books I've already completed, which hopefully means that the second half of March will be better than the first half for me. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me, and I will see you again next time.